Unknown. The fog swelled and rested over the small mountain town. To anyone that could see the buildings, it looked like a picturesque Christmas card. Snow decorated each windowsill, lights flickered against the gray sky, and the smell of sweet pastries drifted through the air. To anyone that would walk through the streets, they would wonder why it was so empty. Shutters were tied to the walls so they could not flap in the sudden chilling winds. Iron nails were hung outside of every door and window. Dark grains of earth, salt, and wood chips of the redwood trees were lined against all the entrances. To anyone, this was supposed to be a day of joy, the day before a new beginning. Yet, everything was silent as can be. That was until a shadow was running through the mist. A disheveled man was rushing over the cobblestone, his jacket whipping around his body. If one were to listen carefully, it would sound like the giggles of children were following him. Samuel Jennings was a simple man. He had a good job at the local bank, had barely any record with the law, was a loving husband of 22 years, and a father to 2 beautiful children that were now missing on the worst night to be outside of the house.
Katie? Daniel?
His voice echoed across the buildings. He could see the curious glances from children staring at him through the windows. Their parents could only stare, sadness filling their eyes. If they had not responded by now, there would be no seeing them again. The voices quieted as he went nearer to the water. The normally peaceful lake looked ominous, dark, and still like glass. This was a cursed day, a solemn day. Children were to stay indoors and tend to the log, while the family tried their best to keep the cursed ones out and keep the joy inside. His wife was away as she was pregnant again and did not want to be near the place for the season. But he had come home to see that the front door was wide open, and the fire log had gone out. The water silently glided over the smooth stones. Many children would wander down here, despite the desperate pleas of their parents. Some knew, and, unfortunately, some did not. He could feel the otherworldly fog billow under his coat, tossing the edge of it right over his head. Blinded for a moment, he heard the soft voice of his son.
I'm sorry, Dad.
He finally managed to pull the jacket from his face. About 30 paces away, he could see the outline of 2 children huddling next to each other by the rocks. Relief swept through his body as he approached. He waved and almost called out to them. But that is when the fog lifted, just enough to see the corpses of his 2 children. Seaweed vines appeared to become taut around their ankles. He froze and felt all his hair rise in fright. His gut churned with the primal need to sprint away, but he could not leave their bodies behind. He forced one foot in front of the other until it was too painful to move anymore. Panic settled into his chest, making it hard to breathe. Just then, a dark head emerged soundlessly out of the water. The tiny droplets sounded like harp chimes as the giant horse head twisted in his direction. He averted his gaze from its glowing eyes that shined through the mist, but for what felt like hours, it watched. It waited for its name to emerge from his lips. Most families always asked it why. Just acknowledging its presence verbally gave it more power over the residents. Keeping his eyes closed, he took one small step back, then another, and another. He could hear its heavy breathing, could almost feel its breath against his turned face. The dragging noise spooked him enough that he almost looked back, but dared not, lest it be a trick.
I'm sorry, Dad.
The quiet voice of his daughter whispered in his ear. He quickly covered his mouth to stifle the sobs as his children disappeared under the dark waters. They had joined the lost children, kids that had fallen prey to the beast that fed on their innocence. The crying spirits swirled around him, wanting an adult to play with them after being alone over the years. And as much as he wanted to, he did not turn back and trekked up to his home. His children would visit again the following year, and many years after that, but they would not be allowed into the house. Should else another fall victim to the unknown beast of the lake.